One of the hardest things to visualize is uncertainty. Because by its definition, uncertainty is something that is uncertain. So once that we put something on paper or on a computer screen, then we have materialized that in a way. And still, even if mathematically, statistically, there are ways to represent this, you have a curve with a normal distribution, and then you know that the higher it is, the more certainty you have. But this is certainly not that intuitive. So it is complicated. And there are ways to plot this. Like you have plot boxes, for instance, that indicate the height of the box, indicate how uncertain you are about a certain value. But in general, these are not optimal ways to represent this. Now, the more complicated part of uncertainty and the representation of uncertainty in a visual way is that you notice that people just keep not understanding the results or the meaning of an uncertain amount in the reports that are being presented. And this is essentially what tells you that there is no clarity in how people present that. So there are several things to it. There are several things. First, the first aspect is that when you're communicating uncertainty, you are communicating probabilities. And what probabilities mean is that all the events that are in the space of solutions, and I don't want to use an extremely mathematical formulation of this, but all the events that might be possible, could happen if you repeat this event a lot of times. Or there is a certain belief that all these events may happen. There's evidence that indicates that all these things may happen. So sometimes we prefer to go with the more likely outcome, but in reality, we would have to be prepared for all possible outcomes, because even if something has a 10% probability of occurring, it might just occur. Now, if you make a decision to take action A, for instance, because that's the one that has the highest probability of taking place, then probably you should also prepare for probability of the other events, because they might also happen. So if you have an event that has a probability of 10% and you have another event that has a probability of 90%, well, the event with only 10% might definitely happen. So you have to prepare for that. You need to have a contingency plan for that. And on top of that, there are even events that might occur that are not even in the space of outcomes that you might expect. If you toss a coin, for instance, which is a typical example, usually people say, well, you know what, it's 50% if it's heads, 50% if it's tails. However, the coin could just land on the edge. And if it lands on the edge, well, what's the probability of the coin landing on the edge? Well, it's really, really, really small, because we not even talk about it. But if it happens, we need to have a contingency plan for that. Or we need to have a contingency plan for things that may happen that are not contained in the space of outcomes that we expect. The last thing that I want to talk about probability, and I think during these videos I've discussed this again and again, is that one needs to separate outcome from the decision-making process. Again, the decision-making process might have been just right. But the outcome depends on the random nature of the process that you're trying to model. So you need to keep that always in mind, always. Because sometimes you might feel, oh, I did something wrong because the less likely event took place, and no, you didn't. No, you didn't. What you need is a contingency plan in case this might happen. So you have to prepare in case for both happens. What is the cost? What is going to be the impact of the two events, the two outcomes taking place, and preparing, accordingly. But again, you have to separate the decision-making process from the outcome and how you are going to evaluate your performance in those circumstances. So I wanted to close up with that idea, because I think that's something that is really important in general, and especially when you're communicating probabilistic or uncertain outcomes, that people have to keep in mind that, well, it might just happen, the less likely event, still you need to have a contingency plan for that.